starts when it's dark. This ain't no place to start dreaming. They scheming on the weakest ones. Preaching for the young, the brave and praying. Stress heavy is a setting sun. Yeah, this is where we come from. Came from when you illuminate the light. Hey, and it's the right to pay for this light. It's like I might be slightly off my rocker, rocking the show out for those that know out. Sharp, and this is how we go out.
All right, everybody. I got a song. For those of you that have been following the series, you know I've been wanting some music. And last week I did an interview with Absolute from Fort Lauderdale, and he said I could use this song. So we're having a little dance party to this song called Motivation. All right. Okay.
Love it.
Yay. And the song is all about motivation, about how like each of us needs to look inside and be kind of like the role model for motivation and like go out and make stuff happen. And that's what Artful Leaders are all about, right? That is what this interview series is all about. It's really about tapping into the wisdom and the stories of leaders at that intersection of the arts, education, healing, social justice, and really looking to you all for how we move forward and how we do this together. I'm so passionate about how artists lead and just do things differently. And especially during this time in the pandemic, we were just talking about how artists are the people that we're looking to for inspiration and creativity and motivation. And so I'm so excited today to have Shayla James here. Woo-hoo. My name is Rochelle Archer, and I'm with Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting. And my work is really about helping those folks who are really passionate about impacting young people's lives do that by prioritizing your own well-being first, so that you can lead with a full tank, so that you can role model wellness effectively, and also build a culture that's really going to sustain the community through these challenging times. And I feel like Artful Leaders have so much to say about how we can do that. And Shayla is a colleague and friend here in San Diego who is a musician, a teaching artist, has her own music studio, also is involved in RISE evaluations with rising arts leaders. But mostly the thing that we're going to talk about today is her role as founder and co-leader of the Teaching Artists Circle here in San Diego. So that was a long list of amazing things that you're involved in. I'm so glad that you said yes to joining us today.
Yay! Yeah, I'm happy as well. Really glad to be doing this interview today. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Shayla James, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm coming to you from the Kumeyaay land, also known as San Diego. And yeah, I think like at my core, I am a teaching artist. Like I am a musician, a multi-instrumentalist. I'm sitting here like in my little music corner. I'm like surrounded by my instruments over here. Like this is my little sanctuary in the apartment. And I'm an educator. I have an arts administration background, and I'm also a racial and cultural equity researcher. So there's just so many like interconnections and all those things. But at my core, like I love my music, I love performing, and I'm also an educator. I love sharing what I know with others and facilitating others' ideas.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you came to do that in a more formal way with teaching artists here in our region. Like, what's the story of this Teaching Artists Circle and what's that all about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I'm going to take us back a little bit. So just go on this journey with me. But like, as I do this work, whatever it is, like I'm reminded that like everything I do is rooted in community empowerment, collective action, collective knowledge. Like that is just where I thrive. And I get so excited when I'm around other people learning, getting advice, giving advice. Like I just love that space. And it occurs to me that like that's community, you know, that connection and that sharing of knowledge and resources, like that's community, sharing your vulnerabilities. So with that said, I got into teaching artistry at a point when I was like out of grad school, didn't know quite what I was going to do next. And I had been teaching private lessons. So I've been teaching like private music lessons, like one on one for years. But I hadn't done a lot of like classroom teaching or in teaching in community spaces. And so I got this residency and I was really excited. I was like, oh my gosh, like, cool. Like, I am going to translate what I know for like my one on ones to like a larger classroom setting. It was an in school residency. And so I was like, yeah, like, let's do this. And I get to create like my curriculum. And I was excited to cater that curriculum to each class. So I was like, yeah. So I think about that first residency because it was like a crash course of that type of teaching. You know, like I felt like after that I was like, oh my gosh, have I been teaching like class in the classroom for like 10 years? But in other but in other ways, it was a very different experience than I had before. You know, I'm this person going on to this like new site. I had to kind of figure out like where the classrooms are, how to print things, lugging my like equipment with me. Like it was just a different type of experience. And so after that, I went on to do some work in a library at Malcolm X Library, and I also had that similar experience where like, you know, I love teaching and bringing my stuff and lugging it, but there was this like unfamiliarity with the sites and the spaces, and feeling also a bit of isolation. You know, I wouldn't really see other teaching artists. It's kind of like one would come in, another one would go out. You know, there wasn't a lot of like conversation in between. Like any connection I had to make on my own of like, hey, can I have your number? Or like, hey, like what were you doing with that class? Like I'm so curious about that. And so I would go to these residencies and have these experiences, but like I would enjoy the teaching aspect of it, but it would stick out to me that I would feel like unfamiliar in the spaces and also feeling a bit alone, because I wasn't seeing other teaching artists. And so through that, so now I'm going to go to like 2018, 2019. And that was a point in my career where I was a teaching artist, but also like doing more arts administrative work. And so I was in these spaces where there was just a lot of arts administrators, a lot of education program managers, a lot of people in marketing and education, like just all of it. And yeah. I would look around these rooms and I wouldn't really see any teaching artists. Like I was the like one of the only ones that identified as a teaching artist. And so I was like, hmm. And there would be conversation about teaching artists, about them, but they weren't there. And there was a lot of questions about like why they weren't there or how they could get them at these meetings. But it was almost as like an afterthought or like, oh yeah, like teaching artists. And so I think through that, I just gained this like curiosity of, you know, what is up with the teaching artist community? Like, I want to know more. Like, I'm a teaching artist, but I'm not that aware of our community, really. Like, I've only really spoken to a few here and there. And so that's when I decided to start some in-person forums. Mm-hmm. And really, again, it was like a curiosity-based inquiry. It was like, I just want us to all talk, like, let's just talk about our journeys, our successes, our difficulties. If you need advice, if you're not sure of something, like let's just have a little space to talk to each other. And I found out like just so much in those spaces, and felt affirmed by that community it was like, oh wow, like they know me and I know them. Like that resonates with me. And things that they were bringing up, I had observed but didn't exactly know how to put words to it. And
Yeah.
so I had these in-person forums in like 2019, and then I was like planning some more for 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and it was a moment of just like, oof, okay, what next? I'm a bit in shock about my personal practice
Yeah.
as an artist and educator, but also recognizing that other people were feeling that way too, and like it was just time to pause for a second. So during that pause, though, a friend of mine, Sarah Kusi, led in this check-in, and it was basically just like a how are you right now, like a lot has shifted, our lives have shifted, what's going on. And I remember that check-in because there were so many people on that call,
Mhm.
and a couple people said, is there a space, is there a online space that we can all just connect, keep talking to each other. There's a lot of emergency funds and grants and things right now. Like, is anyone collecting that, or is anyone sharing that? And that was like kind of my time to be. So I actually do have this online space that I've been, it's still in the beginnings of cultivating it, but it's there. So
Yeah.
that's how I had the Teaching Artist Circle group on there, but then I created a San Diego specific teaching artist group, and it's now about 115 people on there. So people, started joining that group, and so throughout 2020, Sarah would lead check-ins, and then her and I would alternate. And the check-ins could just be, here, like just, how are you? Let's just be together and share what's going on. And others, it was an opportunity for artists to do their craft. It was like, here, just do what you know best and like lead the group in your work. And it was just so healing, and it was just so nice to be in community with people. Like that's how I survived the year. So that's how it came to be, and I think I really like how that happened because it happened organically. It didn't happen with like, I'm gonna do this right now and do it. It was just like, let me talk to people, let me see what's going on, and let's like start to create this together.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I got an opportunity to pop in, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it was a day that maybe you weren't there, but I got to see how beautifully facilitated those little check-ins were with
Mm-hmm.
different artists being like, "Oh, let's write a poem that
Yes.
reflects how we're feeling today," and they would teach us like a little something that they use in their artistry, right? And that was just a really sweet space. And I hold a very similar space for a much smaller group of folks who are working specifically in the creative youth development field. But I love that you've got like 115. I didn't even know that there were that many teaching artists here. Like
Yeah.
that's amazing. So when it comes to like your vision for, having this shared space where people can, feel like they're with their people, right? That's kind of what I heard you saying. Like, these
Mm-hmm.
are my people. They understand my challenges.
Yes.
They're speaking my language. They're saying things I didn't even know how to put into words. Like, what's the bigger vision in terms of, what you're able to create as a result of that community together?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going with this?
Great question. So, um, so we are an independent entity, and that was really important to me.
Yeah.
That we weren't connected to an institution per se, or that we like whatever we do here is independent of any work we get. It
Right.
is,
Right.
like, and
Yeah.
so I wanted it to be created by teaching artists. It's for teaching artists. It's centered on that. And
Yeah.
so uh, my vision is that teaching artists can come as their whole selves, and they can participate in whatever capacity best benefits them. So, if because I know that for myself, like I'm a teaching artist, but I
Yeah.
have to also unpack what that means. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I am an educator, I'm
Mm.
a facilitator, I'm a coach sometimes, I'm a friend, a colleague, a thought partner, and I'm
Mm.
also a musician, a theater artist, a composer. Like, just I'm so many things within that teaching artist space. And
Yeah.
so, and I guess recognizing that that is true for a lot of us, that
Yeah.
sometimes we're really focused on our arts practice. Like, I just want to, like, I just need to do this right now. And then
Yeah.
other times, you're trying to create your curriculum, or you're trying to best engage students and connect with students. And then there are times when they're one and the same. You're like, hey, I'm working on this and I want to share it with you,
Yeah.
as part of like teaching and sharing my art practice. So, I think part of the vision for me is at least people are able to show up
Yeah.
however they are, and that teaching artist circle is a place where if you're curious about teaching, self care, um, technology, um, curriculum, if whatever you're curious about, the community has that knowledge.
Yeah.
And if we can't find someone in the community, let's find someone who's adjacent or outside of the community.
Right.
Because we just have so many resources and people and connections and relationships that, like, I want to leverage those to help us um, feel better, feel supported, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think, that's a bit broad, but that's my vision. It's just that it's a place where people can show up how they are, and participate however best fits them,
Mm.
and connect with others in their own time.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so I think with that, I think community and listening to people has been key. And so I have these thoughts, but I definitely wanted to see if others had these thoughts. So,
Mm.
in the past month, so like it's April now, so in like March, April, Sarah and I released a survey, and just a quick survey of just like, where are you in your teaching artist journey?
Yeah.
Because we thought that that would help us at least focus our energy on what the community wants right now. And
Yeah.
sure enough, what I did see was a lot of people in that space of like, I'm focusing on this thing right here, I'm focusing on my art, or
Mm.
I just started a business, I'm focusing on this, or I'm teaching and getting gigs. And like everyone's in different places, but it seems like having a space that can, I guess, curate and
Mhm.
cultivate and nourish those different journeys is really exciting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that so much because I feel like often, like for me as someone who does a lot of professional development and coaching and consulting with different organizations, there's always this like, well, let's have these trainings for the teaching artists or let's do these things. And there's value in that. And I love that you're really tapping into the experience and the expertise and all that stuff that's already in the community. There are so many incredible people in the community that have honed these just powerful skills to meet all these different kinds of goals that teaching artists meet, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I just
Mm-hmm.
love that kind of like uplifting the strengths of the community that way. And then, yeah, if there's places where there are gaps, you can be like, hey, let's bring somebody in to support.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
love that. And I remember just my work was not quite being a teaching artist, but as an expressive arts
Mm-hmm.
therapist, it was similar where I was like on sites just being like, where is everybody else and what are they doing with the kids and how do we work together to really have
Right.
these big
Mm-hmm.
impacts on these communities that we care about, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
just about, and that's something I feel from you all the time. It's not just about teaching youth these art skills, it's about empowerment, it's about equity, it's about them being able to be a part of the world in an important way. And so, embodying that in this community, I think is really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I wanted to just add that what I've been seeing on this, like, I guess, micro level of the relationships, and then locally is
Mm.
also nationally. Like, there's Teaching Artists Guild, and
Yeah.
they've been, uh like, I'll reference something that Sarah sent me, and it's and I had briefly gone over it but looked at it before this before this interview again. But it's called My Dearest Arts Organization, Are You Listening? And it's a culmination of just like what teaching artists have been through this past year, like being a part of organizations and then seeing their contracts gone,
Yeah.
and having to pivot in different ways. And some of those ways are out of the arts, and teaching artists feeling like, I don't even see my friends are not in this field anymore. And like, what am I doing in this field? Are there going to be opportunities and jobs for me later on? And so, like what I was seeing in this level is like, I think we're
Yeah.
seeing it nationally. We're seeing it everywhere, of teaching artists feeling this way. And I'd say, artists, educators feeling this way of like, how do I keep doing what I'm so passionate about and what I know helps community? So, yeah, just wanted to add that note.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. And I feel like it's a great segue into that conversation about like what is the role of the teaching artist and why it is so important. And I was wondering if you could just from your experience like speak to that a little bit.
What I saw this year was definitely like just being there for people, like just being there and present with them in whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
So, um, I saw that a lot with my private lessons,
Mhm.
instead of like, hey, hi, like, okay, now we're gonna, it was like, let's take a second and
Yeah.
like, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions from the past week? Just meeting people with care and patience,
Mhm.
um, because you just don't know what people are going through.
Yeah.
And so, just taking a second to really care about people. And um, I led a group of older youth, some teenagers. And so this is where I was like, I felt like more of like the facilitator and not the teacher. It was like, I am part of this group too. And I'm
Yeah.
just here to listen and just suggest things as they come. And so we did like um, a class about soundscapes. And
Mm.
it was a really interesting experience for me because I hadn't led that um, type of class. Like most of my classes have been around like instruments, general music based. But this, I was like, they're at home, they're surrounded by sound all the time.
Yeah.
And how can we reframe music and sound to like what they're experiencing in their own environment? And I just learned so much from them during that experience. And they created compositions and meditations, from that work. They like recorded found sounds. Um, they really helped me learn more about different ways in which to teach. And I hope that I at least imparted on them like, how can you use the things around you um, for coping skills. And so they use like soundscapes as just like an example of that. So I think, when I think of these instances, I think just being there for people and like helping them create and use arts to express themselves in that way when they're feeling all sorts of emotions
Yeah.
was just like, it's so important. And I think it's going to be as important as it was last year as it is this year, as we are opening up and having those conversations and students are going back to school. I've in the past week have been asking all my students, how was it going back to school, and it the responses go from like, oh, it was really nice to see friends again, to like, it was really weird. Or like I had to wake up early, just all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I think just like recognizing that, yeah, they went through a lot this year too. Like they went through a lot, and it's an experience that I think, like, from my point of view and where I come in and where I've seen where teaching artists can like they can help those express themselves and understand what they're feeling through the art.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because as you're talking, I'm like kind of pulling out these little pieces. I've been taking this course from this psychologist and neuroscientist, Dan Siegel,
Mm.
who talked a lot about kind of like brain health and mindfulness and wellness. And he talks about the importance of integrating different parts of our lives for wellness. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
teaching artists play such a huge part in that, like kind of integrating our experience, integrating what's going on in our senses and around us, connecting us to others in our relationship to others in
Mm-hmm.
community. And then that creative expression, there's so much research that's coming out now that it is super helpful when like completing the stress cycle. So when we've experienced like increased stress levels, creative expression can actually help us integrate our nervous system again and calm down to calm. So I feel like a lot of times people, want to kind of chuck the arts as the first thing to go when it really is such an integral piece to our wellness. And even though teaching artists might not come specifically with that as their lens, as someone who does look at the world from that lens, I'm like, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
so much of what you're doing. And I think it's so important. And it should be integral to going back on campus. I would love to see teaching artists involved in all these transitional experiences that young people and adults are
Mm-hmm.
having right now, because it's been such a wild ride, and the arts have such a powerful way of like making sense of that and also bringing playfulness and joy to things that are kind of strange and hard too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, yeah, and I have like a couple of thoughts. So, because I can't stop talking about this. Um, but just this past weekend, like I was using this like composition app with like a few students online, and it
Mhm.
just my heart, they were just so excited to like work on their songs on this, and I hadn't I was just so proud of them and so happy, and they were so excited. And I got them started a little bit. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna write this note in, and like we can work on this together. It's like it's like a shared platform we can use. And then my student's like, oh, I made lyrics to it, and I was like, really? She's like, yeah, you know how in my book, like, there's the music and then there's like words to it. Well, I made words, and I was like, don't cry, Shayla, don't cry. But I know. I was like, oh my gosh, this little girl. Like, they continue to surprise me. And which I don't know why they do, because like I know they're capable of all these things, but they surprise me. But it just like it did my heart so much good, because I think like it was rough on both of us the whole year. Like we're trying to meet on Zoom together. I'm trying to teach and do that, and then she's trying to like take it all in on this other side. And then we get to this point where she's creating her own music. We're writing it down. We're talking about it. She has lyrics to it, and I was like, oh my god! And I told her, hey, do you want to perform this like at the next recital? Like we're doing an online recital. She's like, I can do that, and I was like, yeah, like yes, you can. But it was just, it was just so sweet, and just such a like coming to home moment for me of like that the power of expression.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to add that I think too, I've like for adults need this stuff too.
Yes.
You're never too old. You need this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I sat on countless of my friends teaching artists like workshops
Yeah.
throughout the year, and I just felt so full afterward. Like them leading me in an art form that I was not familiar with, or something that I don't always do. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna draw. Yep, yeah, I'm gonna make this poem. Or like, yeah, let's do some meditation. Yeah, let's do some storytelling. Like, just like so game for it because that's just what I needed and what I was, just yeah, what I needed in that moment. So yeah, we all need it.
So teaching artists, go to the teaching artist circle.
Yeah, yes, yes.
We just go full circle here.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it is so important. And it's very similar work that I'm passionate about bringing to staff and organization. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to play together. We need to connect. We need to build community, because everybody's been so isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's super duper important. Um, so, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience? I know you are a musician and you've got some other things that you're doing. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, so I had my first live performance a few weeks ago. Woo! Yeah, so no audience, but it was like live streamed and I was like
Okay.
playing with people again and it just like I was so happy. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm playing with people again and this is just like ah." And it was just a reminder to me that like I am in the correct field. Like I love this
Yeah.
even when I complain and feel down, and it just like was a reminder to me and I was so appreciative of that experience. And like I just want to offer that as like I think I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel or something. Like I'm hoping that like things um that we can do better than before the pandemic. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say normal. I don't want to go back to normal, but I want
Oh,
to do it better. I want to feel connected with people in anything I do. If it's performance, composition, if it's teaching, like I need that to move forward, and for my experiences not to feel like transactional. Like it was very much not that. That performance was not that. It was like wear whatever you would like, and I was surrounded by friends. It was like, and versus me like coming to a gig and then leaving. It felt so good to be in that space.
yeah.
And then I also just wanted to shout out Disco Riot. Um, oh, and I should say who I was talking about was Project Blank. That's who I did the performance with. Shout out to them too. Um, but Disco Riot. So I was like, I finally got more into composition this year, and
Mhm.
it's felt really good because it took me a long time to figure out what does Shayla's music sound like,
Mm.
and it feels really good, and I feel like in a good exploratory space. And I shout out Disco Riot and I shout out Zakia because her and I were just talking and she was like, "Hey, like we're doing some series. Would you like to compose for some of them?" And I was like, "Yes."
I think so.
Yes. And I'm so happy she asked me that because like it led to so many things and it unearthed so many things for me. And so I think again, that is all to say I felt really supported, and that she and them were helping me in my art form. They were like showcasing me and highlighting my work. And you don't get that often as artists or teaching artists.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're one thing, or it's hard to advocate for yourself. But just by having someone come to you and ask you to do something and ask you if you're interested and how would that process look like was just so, so nice.
Yeah.
It was so nice. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of projects and a lot of things I'm excited about, but I just always come it's so cool because you never know who's supporting your work, and whose work you can support.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think it is so important for those of us working in the arts to have that rich personal arts practice so we can that kind of feeds our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you one of my little like rapid fire questions that I was going to get to is like, what's your like go-to for self-care, or, you know, when you're in a high stress day or whatever, what's your go-to? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple. So, and I'm thinking about like the work that we did a few years ago. Um, and I remember you're like, Sheila, like bring your instrument and like let's just do a little jam. And that has stuck with me because it's funny, even though I'm a musician, I don't always think to pick up and play. I'm like, oh yeah, duh, like that makes me feel much better. Like or just listening to music. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes me feel better. So I would say that's definitely one of them. And also I love jigsaw puzzles. Like I love putting together puzzles. Like I bought like 20 of them at the beginning of this year. I was like, all right, this is going to get me through. So jigsaw puzzles and playing music.
I love it. I love it. Um, well, and I was gonna ask you like who inspires you and who you want to shout out, and then you just like went ahead and shouted
I
out.
know I did. I couldn't wait.
So that's great though. You were ahead of the game. One question that I've been asking a lot of folks I think is really interesting, and I'm gonna find some way to kind of collect all these responses and like put them together because I think they're so important. What's something that you wish all educators knew?
Hmm. Hmm. I wish that we all knew that it's okay to admit your mistakes. I think sometimes we're surrounded by these people that we are teaching and facilitating, and we feel like we have to always be right or always like know what's going on. And so having that spotlight on yourself can lend itself to feeling like you can't admit if you were wrong, or maybe your perspective
Yeah.
needs to shift a little bit. And so it's okay to make mistakes. And actually, those who you are teaching or educating are cool with that. You know, if anything, they welcome that much more than you trying to like make excuses or like, yeah, 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 or like, no, you're wrong, actually. It's actually better to just admit or be transparent, you know? Like, I've definitely told students, like, man, it was a rough day. Like, I'm here for you, but just know, like, my energy level's a little bit down. And they
Yeah.
understand, you know? And I think that humanizes you more. Um, and they're more forgiving.
Yeah, well, and it also role models that
Yes.
humility for them,
Yes.
right? And that
Mm-hmm.
like that I think when young people have a teacher who can say like, "Whew, I'm having a hard time," then now they know how to say that to someone in their life, you know, like, "Oh, give me a minute because I'm having a struggle," or "Oops, I blew it," or you know, whatever. I think that's that part of that social emotional learning and role modeling that we do often comes from us just being authentic. It's not from some fancy lesson. It's from us
Exactly.
just being real with them. So
Mm-hmm.
I love
Mm-hmm.
you brought that up. Very cool. Very cool. Well, any final words for the audience out there?
So, as I said, I teach private lessons. I teach violin, viola, and piano lessons. So, if you're interested, you can find me on Sempre Music Studio on Instagram or Facebook. I think I have a Yelp, but Sempre, Sempre Music Studio. And stay tuned with Teaching Artist Circle. I think we're in a really great space. We just had that survey. We received like 65 responses, which like that is like
It's huge.
Yes, like that was like no short of like community effort and determination to get those responses. So yeah, stay tuned. You know, our plan is to share what we learned in the survey. We think that that's important to be transparent with the community. It'll be like not specific, you know, to specific responses, but definitely things that we just saw in the community that we'd like to move forward with. So yeah, so stay tuned. Please join Teaching Artist Circle. We have Instagram and Facebook page, and also the San Diego Teaching Artists group on there.
Yeah, awesome. And for those of you who are not local San Diego people, but you want to learn more about how to do a Teaching Artist Circle or something like that, you can always reach out to Shayla. She's a great connector. And if you are interested in this kind of content, these amazing artful leaders who are doing wonderful work in the world, you can follow Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting on Facebook, or you can subscribe on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. As we've just got so many incredible people doing really impactful work through the arts, education, healing, social justice, and there's just so much good stuff happening. And I know I wanted to speak to, like, this is a really crucial day for us in the United States, what's happening with this verdict coming out with the Derek Chauvin trial. And I think that it's important in times like this to hold on to the folks who are out here doing the good work, you know, because it can feel overwhelming and feel like everything is just going to hell in a handbasket. And some things are, you know, and there are those of us that are out here. That's why community is so important. That's why us coming together and working side by side to push these important causes forward together and taking good care of ourselves in this process are so important. But
absolutely, thank you. Yes, yeah, my hearts go out to everyone right now. Just
stay strong, people, and we're gonna get through this one deep breath at a time.
Absolutely.
So much love to everybody. Much love to you, Shayla. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I will see you at Rising Arts Leaders soon.
Yay! Thank you.
Bye.